Thanks, folks, for joining us again on a family service, a V2VG video podcast. We have just come off of the kind of fun and family-friendly "What Did I Eat?" challenge video that we did.
And which was a lot of fun. It
really
was. And we really enjoyed it. But unfortunately, during the same day, late Saturday night, early Sunday morning in Sacramento, California, there was a mass shooting. And I just wanted to talk briefly about some things that are very troubling with the things that have happened in that time frame. First, I guess we should define what a mass shooting is. So,
that's a problem because they throw that word around a lot.
And indeed, and so according to the FBI, a mass shooting is known as any incident in which at least 4 people were murdered with a gun. So,
I mean, it's pretty simple. 4 people killed with a gun. It's pretty straightforward.
And so one of the issues that happened, as far as media-wise, was they did this whole story on how there's already been over 115 mass shootings this year of 2022. Okay. And so when you look at their graph that they use, and it's from the Gun Violence Archive.
The gun violence, that's a left lean. Okay.
So, in December of 2021, what they're considering mass shootings, there are 4 incidents where there were 0 deaths. Then there are 3 incidents where there was 1 death, 1 incident of 3 deaths. So, of the ones on page 1, there were only 2 incidents that fall under the FBI category of.
So they're changing the rules. They're changing the definition as they go.
Yes.
So when I was in school, to get my degree in psychology, we learned that you can change the outcome of a statistic by changing the parameters of the study.
Exactly.
This isn't just changing the parameters of the study. This is changing the definition of the defining parameters of the study. And so they're calling it one thing, and so the public reads. The public is really good at, and I'm guilty of this too sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You read the headline and you go, "Holy shit, that's a lot of fucking
right."
Like, wow, that's really bad, right?
Yeah.
But when you dig into it, if you choose to dig into it, you go, wait a minute. For example, nobody died. Not that it wasn't a tragedy. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is nobody died. And then you do a little bit more research and you say, hold on. So what is defined as a mass shooting? You can get into the minutia of who should define it. But, okay, so the federal government, the FBI, which is the premier law enforcement agency of the government.
Yeah.
Right? They define mass shootings, and you read it, okay? So let's just go with that as our base. So if you go with that as the base, and then you match that up with this study, you say, wait a minute, there's a huge disconnect. By their own count, that doesn't jive together. They're obviously sensationalizing any shooting as a mass shooting.
And they're making it sound
mass shooting.
Super, like
it's a pandemic.
Valid. Right, the Gun Violence Archive, like it sounds authentic.
And all gun violence, therefore, according to the Gun Violence Archive, all gun violence, by virtue of the Gun Violence Archive's skewed definition of what a mass shooting is, they're all mass shootings.
Well, yeah.
If you go by their definition and not by a somewhat more objective definition of a mass shooting where people die, four or more people.
Which I think most people are under the impression that when they hear a mass shooting, that there will be an actual death, at least mass, you would think at least 3 people dying due to. I mean,
right.
I think that's
like the assumption that you get like in your heart. Like,
yeah.
It's kind of like the thing.
The context of
the context.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like when you say a couple, a few. And,
exactly.
And the little kids ask you, like Nathaniel was like, "Dad, what's a couple mean?" And I said, "Well, off the top of my head, I would say a couple means 2, and a few means 3 or more."
Right. Exactly. So,
like, is that the actual definition? I don't know, but that's what it seems to me to mean.
Yeah.
But if you go by the Gun Violence Archive, a few means 1 or more.
Or none.
Or none. Or none, apparently.
And, so I don't want to beat the horse of the difference there, but I just want to express that there are a few concerns that have happened, and today is Thursday, from Sunday morning at 02 California time to now, that has happened politically and media-wise, as well as mention some things that have transpired prior to that have led to these things. So
where did this happen? You said
Sacramento, California.
Okay. Sacramento.
So we have the media blunder, I guess. This.
Well, they're pushing their agenda. Okay,
so
fine. All right.
So the other thing that I found very, very interesting. So within a few hours, I would say probably less than 24 hours, and before they had any suspects or any arrests, any actual major investigative breakthroughs, both the governor of California,
Newsom, I believe,
and our fine president made these interviews talking about how we have to crack down on gun violence and new gun reform and things. So how is it that you're able to make that assumption before we even know what parties or party is involved in the reliability as far as where they received the firearms, where is it legal, all these things? So
the problem again with these, and a lot of people will say, the far-leaning left won't waste a good tragedy, right?
Well,
and that's
I get it. Violence sells, right?
Violence sells. It's sensational. But here's the thing: it's like, without being gruesome, but by being gruesome, like the blood wasn't even dry, and they're coming out saying this stuff. But here's the thing: they're hammering down on these gun control, stricter gun control things. But with most gun control laws, the vast majority, again, it's restricting the legal gun owners' rights for firearms and not attacking the illegal people who acquire their firearms illegally, the criminals.
Yes, no, exactly.
Like, why attack the law-abiding citizens when it's the criminals who got the weapons? And in this case, you said they didn't even know where the firearms came from. At this point,
they have no idea. So in case, and I didn't specify, in case our viewers don't know, in Sacramento there were a mass shooting, 6 people dead, at least 15 people injured, possibly more.
In this shooting?
In this one.
So how did this happen?
So the one thing that so it was like 02 in the morning. It was like club hours, it was like...
Okay. So it wasn't at a birthday party?
No,
or a wedding.
No, yeah. So this was middle of the night. And so every day the last 2 days, the last 3 days, there's been new updating information.
Who the fuck is awake at 2 o'clock in the morning to be in a crowd like that?
People going to, like young people going to the club type of thing, right?
A club, you said. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
club. Like that type of
clubbing
scene. Yeah.
All right.
Things that we can't afford to do because we're old and have children.
And married.
and the more important one, married. So, so what's interesting is that the first piece of evidence that they found was a pistol on the ground that was reported as stolen. So they knew this gun had been fired. They knew that it was stolen, therefore illegally in the possession of
the shooter.
One of the shooters, right?
So again, illegally acquired.
So
all right.
And then so they had 2 or 3 different pickups. So they weren't arrested. They were, looking for information.
Okay.
Of those 3, one of them was arrested. This individual was said to have a firearm that was modified to become a fully automatic, which
also illegal.
Federally is illegal,
Yeah,
not
time.
even state.
Yeah, big time. You cannot do that. Don't get any ideas. They're gonna nail you for that.
One of the other guys they picked up was a felon who should not be in possession of a firearm that they know had one, but they let him go. So that was okay because they believe that he did not fire, but he shouldn't have had one anyway, right?
That's a separate issue, but okay.
But it falls under the whole gun control aspect, right? You would think.
Well, if he's a felon that's not supposed to be in possession or access to a firearm, that's a separate issue. Okay, yeah, whatever.
So
that's a separate issue, which is still fucked up.
So the other individual
I don't understand.
Was the brother of the one who was arrested, and he was injured during the firefight. Okay. So they had to wait for to be cleared by the hospital to make the arrest. So that was the plan. So that was as of yesterday. As of today, there are 5 people that are arrested, and now they are calling this a gang-related shooting. So now, I know we were both part of what could be considered gangs, you being in the Army and me being in the Marines, but I think the term gang here is like an illegal affiliation with criminals. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, maybe...
The difference is the gangs we were a part of were legally allowed to have firearms. We were trained.
Yes, right.
And those gangs are not.
So this new information has popped up
as of this morning. They should make gangs illegal.
You would think, right? Yeah. I mean, and one of the main things that happens within gangs is gun violence.
Maybe make some laws about how if you're in a gang, you should be locked up and things of that nature instead of attacking legal gun owners. But that's just my idea. I'm an idiot, but whatever.
I'm glad you brought up laws because before her position of the mighty vice president, who I'm not gonna say much besides the effect of what's going on here. She put into effect 2 laws and.
Because she was the Attorney General for California.
She was, and
so the Attorney General of a state is the top, not law enforcement, the lawmaker in the state.
Yes, right? And typically they're the prosecuting forces for the state.
Okay.
So a lot of times in murder cases and cases
crimes
where the victim is either not able to defend themselves or whatever, but she really wasn't that great at her job. So she put into effect these couple laws that are propositions. I'm old, so I'm going to pull this closer.
So this is before she became vice president.
This is before, but this is all relevant because it's based out of California. Okay. So, in Proposition 47, titled and reinforced by Kamala Harris, was named the Safe Neighborhood and School Act, and it reduced a host of felonies to becoming misdemeanors. So
wait. If it's named the Safe Act, Safe blah 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 Act, how does it reduce felonies to misdemeanors? That should be the other way around, right?
Well, let me tell you, because this is amazing.
That doesn't fucking make sense, but okay.
So what this did was turned felonies into misdemeanors. Some of the felonies that were turned into misdemeanors are drug crimes, which I think is involved with gang-related violence.
All right. I mean, all right.
Let's see. What else do we have? Date rape. This is my favorite one. Date rape. So this is okay, apparently. You just get a slap on the wrist if you do this.
So that's turned from a felony to a misdemeanor?
Yes. And here's one that affects everybody. Is all thefts under $950, even for repeat offenders who steal every day, it did not create a safe neighborhood. So think about it. This is just under $1,000. So if someone breaks into your house and steals $900, which maybe your rent is, I don't know, my rent's $1,400 with all of that I have, that is 2/3 of my rent gone. And how do I get any, justice for that? There isn't. They were just
no
like,
justice.
it's okay.
Never mind the fact that a lot of firearms are under $900.
Well, yes, and this is why you've been seeing a lot of the mass looting out in California as well. Walgreens, all
usually
these places.
It's 500, right? Is the typical.
I think that's what it was.
Okay,
but this is double. So
okay.
So this is really interesting. So it changes felonies into misdemeanors for a couple of things.
Because that's safe.
And then there's Proposition 57, which is titled "The California Parole for Nonviolent Criminals and Juvenile Court Trial Requirements Initiative."
Nonviolent
which
criminals.
is a whole big, paragraph of saying, we want to be able to have early release for nonviolent criminals and juveniles, right?
So
basically,
whatever they say, they classify these crimes as nonviolent crimes.
Yes.
Okay. So what are these crimes?
So the notable nonviolent crimes include rape by intoxication of an unconscious person. So that's really awesome. How about this one? Human trafficking involving a sex act with minors. That's a good one.
This doesn't make any freaking sense, dude.
And then, how about arson causing great bodily harm?
That's the definition of violent.
And so,
and
I'm sure there are some of our viewers who are like, well, what does this have to do with anything that we're talking about? Okay, well, the next one would be drive-by shootings.
Oh, good Lord.
Assault with a deadly weapon and hostage taking.
Okay, those are the definition of violence. Like drive-by, assault with a deadly weapon is violence.
And those are both widely known within gang-related violence. So,
which would be the 2 a.m. shooting in Sacramento?
Yes, and that's my point.
And
this
now
is what's
that's classified as
frustrating.
non-violent.
So this is what's frustrating to me is we're lucky enough to live in New Hampshire where we have a pretty equal Democrat to Republican political views.
It's a purple state,
which is nice. So there are certain things.
Good representation.
One thing that has stood true is our 2A amendments.
Yeah.
And so when you start talking about gun reform, and any of these people that died, there are 21 people affected, 6 dead, 15. If any one of them, or if a couple of them had the opportunity to carry, could have possibly ended,
ended or shortened the killing spree or the shooting spree.
And honestly, by these definitions, it makes me wonder how long these individuals will be arrested and actually serve in prison.
Well, if the definition is that they're non-violent crimes, they can only carry so much of a maximum penalty if they're assigned the maximum penalty if they're found guilty. There's a lot of ifs there.
Even if it even goes to trial, right?
Because
they could plead out and maybe turn something that would be. I mean, I don't see how this would not be first degree murder. Gangland shooting should always be the.
How do you accidentally do a drive-by shooting to shoot at multiple times at a group of people? So
maybe they plead out and they get off on involuntary manslaughter or something,
So you have, on the one hand, you have these high-profile politicians saying we need stronger gun control laws, and then on the other hand, you have high-profile politicians saying, sure, that's a great idea. But on the back end, I'm going to take felonies, violent, despicable felonies, by and large, and make them misdemeanors. It doesn't fucking compute. It doesn't make any sense, dude. It doesn't, there's a cognitive disconnect somewhere.
Absolutely. Right? And I'm sure there are people...
Maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, let me know.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there a cognitive disconnect in what I just said? Does that make sense to do that? Because in my worldview, it doesn't make sense. And I know there's people with different perspectives, and I know there's different points of view, and I get that, and I relish that. And I love the fact that we can all have different points of view.
Yes.
But when it comes to crime... I'm not talking about punishment, but when it comes to crime definitions...
There has to be a line.
There has to... Exactly. There's got to be a line.
Yeah, and so I'm sure people are wondering, like, why is this even important to these guys? And, well, for those of you who don't know us, we both were born in California. We didn't know each other or anything,
but born there.
We were born in California. Up until recently, you had a brother who lived in California and then lived in Washington and stuff. So there we
I have family that lives in California now.
And I was just going to say, we have brothers in arms, I'm sure, live out there. So this is relevant to us and personal to us. And I know you were joking with me, like, oh, you're really talking about this shooting thing again and again. Well, because, like, no, we're not there now, but we do know people there. We do know the circumstances there, and it is concerning, to say the very least.
Well, and there's one more aspect about this that is actually true, in that, like it or not, believe it or not, laws like styles and everything else that originate in California or on the West Coast tend to propagate to the East Coast and set a precedent.
Absolutely.
And that is a fact.
Just look at New York. I mean, New York is,
right.
Is a prime example.
A lot of states follow suit with what California sets as a precedent, and they follow, oh, it worked in California, it'll work here, and it does.
Well, so...
And sadly...
The silver lining, though, just so everybody can have silver lining, Georgia is in the process of voting for a constitutional carry. If it gets voted in, that means half of the 50 states, 25 of the 50 states, will have constitutional carry. That doesn't mean having a permit. That means a true Second Amendment constitutional carry.
You can carry because it's your... and I don't want to say God-given right, because that doesn't make sense. You have a right to carry because the Constitution says you have a right to carry.
Yeah. And
so good.
And the numbers are there to show how much that either open carrying or concealed carrying, and what would be known as brandishing if it was an illegal act, has prevented violent crimes from happening.
Yeah, because if it didn't have an effect, half of the country, basically, wouldn't be either pushing for it or having it.
Yeah, and then we could all understand the push for gun control, right? I mean, if it had zero effect.
Why is it, just as a game of thought, as a thought, I don't know, how do you articulate it, as a thought project, as a thought game, why is it that there seems to be more of this problem in far left-leaning states and areas than there are in right-leaning states and areas, just as a thought game?
Well, you know what it comes down to is
not that one side or the other's better. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the philosophy on guns. Why is guns as a deterrent, not as a freaking Wild West shootout. I'm saying guns as a deterrent.
Yes,
right?
And
firearms.
And I think the other question
Wild
is,
West walk around with freaking 6 shooters on your head.
I think the other question is, why is the gun-free zone sign not stopping more gun violence itself? Because
I think the problem is sometimes they're made of plastic, and you can't take them down and hit somebody with them.
Make
them out of metal. Make them out of metal, and you're good. Like the hospitals have them out of metal, and nobody ever carries weapons in the hospital. I never see people with knives or multi-tools in the hospital, guns, nothing, because they're made of metal.
Yeah, that could be it.
So that's the takeaway.
We'll leave you with that.